Attention, prisoner 903-8970, you're up for parole.
American Arts Radio presents live from Chisel Multimedia Studios, Comics on Parole in Hollywood South. Here's your host, Dan Glazer.
Welcome to Comics on Parole. My name is Dan Glazer, and right now we have as our... We get closer. We gotta get closer. Right now we have as our esteemed guest, Mr. Comedian, touring comedian for about 30 years. How long now?
It's been a while.
30 years. Mr. Phil Perrier, who's wrote for David Letterman, Leno, and Arsenio Hall, correct? Mm-hmm. Very good, very good. So he lived in L.A. for years. Hey, are we on Facebook Live? We are. Okay. So he's. How long have you moved back here, right?
Yep.
When did you move back?
I was out there from 2000 until 2018. I've been here since then.
Oh, so you've been here a while. So you loved LA.
And I grew up in Atlanta too, so.
Oh, really? So
there's that.
Oh, very good, very good. So now this is no small time comic. This young man has been touring all over the country. You performed with some big stars out in LA.
Yeah.
Like who? Name some of them.
Golly, Jay Leno.
Were you actually performing at shows?
Drew
daily?
Carey.
Now, did you know Drew Carey before he was big?
Yeah, I mean, I knew him when he was, getting,
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I knew him back in the '90s. So
very good. Now, there's a reason, a main reason we're having Phil on here. It's to talk about his movie called One Nighter, right?
One Nighters.
It's a documentary, and 30 days you traveled 8,000 miles interviewing all kinds of comics, professional comics.
Yeah, well, we were doing a tour of, myself and Dan Friedman were doing a tour of Montana and Idaho and all these places, 8,000 miles. We did 30 shows in like 35 days.
Right.
And then before and after the tour, I interviewed Jay Leno, Judy Tenuta, Tim Wilson, Jerry Farber, Billy Gardell,
right,
talking about their road experiences and their travels and their early stand-up experiences. And
what made you do that all of a sudden?
Well, I was working. Dan and I were working in like Montana or someplace, and it was just so beautiful. I said, "God, we should shoot some stuff." And he said, "Okay." And then I said, "Well, let's do a documentary." And he was like, "Okay." And boom,
that was a lot of work.
I mean. Had I known how much work and money and time, I would have never done it.
Did you get it done in 30 days?
Well, we got the tour done. We didn't miss any show. I mean, we were driving in some horrible conditions, but we made it to every show. We did every show. They all went well with one. There's a couple of squeakers, but yeah.
So you were performing while you were doing.
Yeah, I mean, we would drive all day, and then the David Oyster, who was directing and shooting, he was in the car talking to us and shooting the scenery and stuff, and then we'd get to the hotel, we'd have a little rest, and then he'd shoot the shows, and then after the show, he might shoot some more stuff, and then we'd get up early and shoot some more stuff, and then we'd get back on the road. But I mean, a lot of driving.
Oh, okay. So we're going to get to your movie clip towards the end. So you performed for as Arsenio Hall show.
Correct. Yeah,
what year was that?
That was in 2014.
I hear he's a very nice guy.
He is a sweetheart of a guy. Yeah, he was the best boss I ever had in my life.
Well, how long? And you wrote for him?
I was a staff writer for him for the year that the show was on.
I sure thought that was on a lot longer. I used to watch it every
Well,
night.
because he had the first show in the '90s, which was on for like five years. So this was only on for 1 year. But I would still be there now if it was.
Really?
Oh, I loved it. I just loved it.
He comes here to perform at the Atlanta Comedy Theater.
Yeah, no, he's brilliant. I love him.
Have you been to the Atlanta Comedy Theater?
I have not.
Yeah, he comes in there and performed. I know he's performed there. Something I wanted to tell. Oh, anyway, they're making a comeback back to America. What was it? Coming to America.
Coming to America too.
So he's busy anyway. So what we want to do is start with it's a very brief clip because I'm not allowed to show any more than 30 seconds or we'll get suspended. But yeah, it's terrible. But anyway, we want to show a little clip of Arsenio introducing you and about 30 seconds of your set. Okay. So go to the first Arsenio introduction.
Please welcome stand-up comedian Phil Perrier.
Woo! All right, great to be here. Hope you all enjoy my show. If not, just look at this as a bad episode of House. Now, in case you're wondering why I've got the cane and the slight limp, a while back I turned 40, and it all went straight to hell. No, really, this is actually an insurance scam. Just play along.
I mean, he looks no different than he did 30 years ago.
He hasn't aged a bit.
And I mean, I don't think there's any Botox, or I think he's just,
I've heard he's a very nice. Just people met him when he came here.
Yeah,
super nice. I wish his show had. I was glad to see him come back on the air.
I know, and it got renewed, and then I don't know what happened, but so we were excited for.
It did get renewed.
It got renewed. Jay Leno walked out one day during his monologue and gave him the letter. He said, "You've just been renewed for a
And
second."
what happened? It didn't go back on.
No, it didn't. So they can apparently a network can giveth and taketh away.
It's a rough industry.
Yeah, I'm telling you,
Well, he had to make a movie anyway.
Yeah, he's doing fine.
Doing fine. Okay,
fine.
So let's talk about. I think it's good to cover some of these people. It's like you went to Jay Leno. You interviewed Jay Leno. And some of these interviews went quite long.
Yeah, well, I mean, I interviewed Jay Leno for like 40 because he'd just done his taping. We're back in the green room at the Tonight Show.
Right.
And we went on for like 45 minutes.
Let's show a photo of Jay Leno, by the way. Okay. You can put him in the middle. Down there's fine.
That's him.
Yeah, that's it. That's Jay Leno.
That's Jay Leno.
Anyway, so I hear he's a great guy. I'm surprised he didn't ask you to come by and work on his car. That's what
he never invited me back to work on the car because I mean I can't work on car. I never could work on cars
because Rich Scheidner came on the show. And
Rich is a car guy, right?
No, I don't know if Rich is, but when he went on Jay Leno, he said, "Rich, come to the house. I want to look on your car."
Yeah,
so he drove down there. He's working on his car.
Wow. Yeah.
But so you interviewed him for quite a while.
Yep.
What was the most thing that stood out most you remember from what Jay Leno?
Yeah, this wasn't in the final film, but he said that when it was very early gigs, he's in Boston. He's like 18 years old. He's just starting to do stand up.
Right.
And the guy from so the owner of the local club said, "I got this gig for you."
Right.
So he goes to this house in a kind of residential area, and he sits in this reception room, and there's just like men, kind of like with lunch pails, work guys just hanging around. And then once in a while, a young woman will come up, grab one of the men, and go upstairs. It was a house of ill repute, and he was supposed to. And so his job was to tell jokes to these guys, which is pretty.
Well, they don't want to be noticed.
No, they don't exactly. Yeah.
Was that his idea or the house?
It was not his idea. I mean, he just went. He didn't know what kind of gig it was, and he got there, and then I don't think he even got paid.
That sounds like it was a joke.
No, it was. I believe it was a true story.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, and then he worked with like 2 strippers, and they would do military bases.
Well, that wasn't unusual though.
And he said one time he was getting heckled mercilessly, and one of the strippers got out of her giant plastic champagne glass and punched a guy in the nose. Just leave the kid alone. Yeah.
Well, for a long time, that's all where comics perform were strip clubs.
Yeah, and I don't think I would have been a comic, starting in those conditions. I mean, the like people in the 50s and 60s. I mean, it was so much harder.
Oh yeah.
Because I started during the comedy boom, and there's clubs everywhere, and weekend rooms, and one nighters. So it was really easy when I started.
I was talking to Jeff Justice, who's a well-known comedy teacher. I call him the professor.
Well, yeah, he used to be he was really good.
I think he was mostly New York.
I saw him in Atlanta. I saw him at the Punchline, killing it.
But he would say when he was in New York, he would you perform one club, you get paid, go to another club. And it wasn't small money back then.
Well,
you get paid $800 and go to another club. And he performed all over, but I know he performed a lot in New York.
He was very successful, yeah.
Well, he owned all the magic stores here in Atlanta.
Is that right?
He owned these magic stores in Atlantic. Yeah, I call him the professor.
I always wondered where the hell his money came from.
Well, I think he did well financially, but and also he speaks. He's an MC.
Like after dinner kind of.
Right. So let's go on to Judy Tenuta. I'm Facebook friends with Judy Tenuta, so I'm going to message her your preview of the movie.
Okay.
Now, what was it? So was she crazy during the interviews, or?
Well, yeah, she had she played the. She had a little accordion, so she played some accordion. But she's just, she's been doing comedy for so long. She's so good at it that her insights, her little stories and her knowledge and understanding of the art form of stand up is she and Jay and Bill, but she really knows what she's doing. And I saw her one time in Toledo, Ohio. I was working some little club nearby, and I went and I saw her show, and she pummeled. This crowd was eating out of her hand. It was a packed, like probably 400 people in this comedy club, and she destroyed.
I wonder if a lot of her
destroyed.
If anyone looks like they're not, they make it up as they go. It's her.
Yeah.
something takes her over, and she goes. I saw her on a talk show. She's just going nuts, jumping on the She's just fun. It seems like a really nice person.
She is, and she's just a natural. She's a naturally gifted performer.
Right,
and
right.
she's tiny. She's a little.
Oh, she is?
Little teeny little thing.
She's very friendly on Facebook.
No, she's
she
wonderful.
really
I'm a huge
interacts.
fan.
Then Billy Gardell. Now Billy Gardell has remained loyal to Chris DePetta from Atlanta, the
And
Punchline.
Chris
Atlanta.
DePetta's in the movie too.
Yeah, Chris.
Yeah.
Nice guy. I just met him for
Yeah,
the first
great
time a
guy.
few months. And Billy Gardell, he must be a real down-to-earth, friendly guy. What?
Yeah,
So wait, before we go, what was your most memorable thing that Judy had to tell you?
Well, she was talking about being on stage. I said, like, what's the strangest thing? And she was like, there've been a few. Because, I mean, her act is kind of strange. But she said she was doing her act one time, and this gigantic, like, lumberjack dude came up, picked her up, and was like bench, like doing,
Really?
Yeah, and then just put her down, and she was like, "Oh, Dad, why do you always have to mess with me?" But afterwards, she was like, "Hey, was there any security? I mean, what? Some guys just comes
That's
up and grab."
hilarious.
Yeah.
That's
But
hilarious.
she,
That's very memorable.
there's nothing. You're not going to throw her off balance.
She's amazing. She's amazing.
Yeah.
Billy Gardell. Now, Billy, he's on a new show now, right?
Bob Hart's Abishola.
Yeah, and
Monday night.
Yeah, and so what was the most memorable thing? And Chris DePetta, who's part owner in the Punchline.
Yep.
He still represents him.
Yep, to this day.
Yeah.
And I think it's working out pretty well.
Yeah,
for,
I know.
all involved. Yeah.
And we're going to get it to Chris. Chris is a very nice guy.
Yeah,
I was thinking.
And he knows. I mean, he knows the comedy business like better than anybody.
Yeah.
The business end of it.
Such a nice guy.
Yeah.
I was thinking about. I went to see Rich Eisner perform his history of stand-up comedy at the Laughing Skull, and Jeff Foxworthy was there. And I'm just thinking, Jeff Foxworthy, Billy Gardell, these are people that are truly comedy history.
Yeah.
As important as Bob Hope or any of the other ones, even though they're more legendary. They're still legendary. If they were ever put in a time capsule,
Oh yeah.
these people.
Because the comedy boom, they were like Billy was part of
Right.
it, and
But there's still
Tim
to me
Wilson.
legends like Bob Hope, George Burns, in a different way because they still were they were.
I guess
big
like
at
Dave
their time.
Chappelle is probably the biggest now.
Dave,
He's
yeah,
the biggest.
he's still big.
Oh,
Dave
yeah.
Chappelle's
Well, he's
still
just
big.
brilliant.
Yeah. Now, okay, Tim Wilson. Tell me about Tim Wilson. I've always heard about him. What was
Tim? Okay, he was a comic from Columbus, Georgia, who had a southern talk like this,
I watched this.
And people he played guitar and sang. Comics are usually persnickety about guitar acts, but he was so smart and so funny.
Oh, I meant to. Oh, you got his picture. Okay, go ahead.
And yeah, there he is playing guitar. And he passed away. He had died. He died of a heart attack in 2014. He was only like 50 years old, 51, 52.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And he's in the film, and I think his insights about like at one point he says, if you've been doing comedy for 20 years and you're not just doing it for therapy and because you love it, you're missing the point. And to me, there's like no greater insight. And then this is a guy that, he was working his butt off. He was making a lot of money, but he knew, it was his therapy.
And he loved it.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's why a lot of comics do it.
Yeah.
Oftentimes they have a very painful childhood.
Yeah.
And it's their therapy.
Yeah, and anybody in the film, I think that really shines. I think a few of them do, but Tim is just so funny and so interesting. And he's talking about like AAA show business, like you're working these clubs, and then boom, you do a TV show. It's like you get called up to the big show once in a while.
Was he on a TV show?
He did the Tonight Show.
Oh.
He was on A Grace Under Fire with Brett Butler. But then he was all over syndicated radio, like Bob and Tom and all those.
Right.
He was on there a lot, and he had a major label record deal. So he was major league, but then he worked smaller venues.
And you do rep Butler. You interviewed her in the show, right?
No,
oh, you
no,
didn't.
she was not in it. I think I reached out to her, but it was one of those things just didn't happen.
Right.
I reached out to Bill Cosby.
but
that would have.
He's usually wait. Was he?
He didn't reply, but I think had we put him in the film, we probably would have had to cut him out.
But he's a real friendly guy. We had a comic here, Josh.
A little
Harris.
too friendly, apparently.
Yeah, that's true. But Josh Harris, he was there's a local comic here. He came to perform at his university or something. He sent a note to his manager, can I have 30 minutes with him?
Wow.
And he brought him in there, and he said he's the nicest guy in the world at that time. So, and
I've heard he's quite popular now.
Yeah, I actually heard he performs.
Yeah.
But when I saw him performing at the Cobb Civic Center here, Energy, he could wiggle his finger and you laugh.
No, he was, and that's the thing. It's like, you know, when I was growing up, it was Carlin, Pryor, and Cosby. That was like Mount Rushmore. I mean, like, you know, those were the three great comics. You know, Johnny Carson was like the great talk show host and comic, but Carlin, Pryor, to me, I mean, there was Bob Newhart and Rickles and all these, you know, Rodney Dangerfield, Joan Rivers, but Carlin, Pryor, and Cosby were like, I mean, so totally different styles.
So back at Kennesaw University, you know Kennesaw, a friend of mine, The Who was traveling with Tommy. And I don't think it had been released yet.
Mid-70s.
They were testing it. It wasn't famous. It wasn't big yet. They were touring with it. So they had a comic that came and opened for The Who. And then after that, this friend of mine, one of my best friends, he went to the restroom and he sees this comic in there. He goes, "You're really funny. What's your name?" He's George Carlin.
Oh my God! Things might work out for you.
So anyway, let's go to So your friend and my friend Jerry Farber, Jerry the Farber, who's a local legend here in Atlanta. He tours all the country, but he's just a well-known name here in Atlanta. Yeah. He is in the movie. And
you bet.
What's the thing you remember most about Jerry? Do you have Jerry?
Yeah, Jerry. He tells a story. He did a show in Danville, Virginia. Yeah. And he gets on stage and he does a bit about, back then he did a bit about deer hunting. Uh-huh. How it's not a sport. It's only a sport if the deer has a gun and can shoot back. And so this guy stood up and said, "Who the hell are you, you Jew boy from New York, to come down here and tell us what to do?" Right. And Jerry was like, "Well, I'm a Jew from North Carolina, and I'll kick your hillbilly." And they start going back and forth, and he gets physically attacked by these three big guys on stage, and they're fighting, and the police get called, and all this kind of stuff.
So Jerry will fight back.
He did fight back, and he said, and then the police came, and the police escorted him like 30 miles out of town because he said those guys were going to follow him. So I mean, it was like that. Yeah, I mean that was, and he said it was like the scariest thing ever.
I've never heard that story.
Yeah,
and I've known Jerry about 10 years. I never did. Heard that.
No, that was and then also, I asked Jerry, it's like, why do you do this? Why do you get up on stage? I mean, people are terrified of public speaking, and yet comics want to do this. And he kind of had this little soliloquy about just the beauty of making strangers laugh. It's like babies gurgling or the sound of music. I mean, there's just nothing as sort of good for the soul as making strangers laugh. And I thought that was one of the most poignant moments in the documentary.
Oh, very good.
Jerry
very good. Very good. Hey, did we show Judy Tenuta's photo up there while we were talking? Okay, good. Yeah, Jerry's been a very good friend of mine.
Jerry's a great guy.
He's fun to perform with.
My first time ever on stage was at Jerry Farber's club in Buckhead.
Yeah, and there's been no other club really. That club had such a cozy feel.
Oh my God, yeah. It was like it wasn't a basement joint, but it felt like it was just totally dark, like 90 people. There wasn't a bed seat in the place, and there's Jerry like right in your face playing the piano.
Those were the good old days.
Taking his clothes off.
We were young. You're 5 years. I was 28 when I first went there, so you were 23.
I was 21 when I first got on stage there. Yeah.
Oh wow. Okay.
And Jerry was talking because he had the first non-smoking club.
That's what.
And he was talking about having emphysema, and that was 35 years ago. So he's the slowest dying person. He's got the slowest case of emphysema ever documented in medical history. But
did he really have emphysema? Or the beginning?
I don't know, but he's still alive. And
that's what killed the club when it went non-smoking, right? It didn't.
I don't know. I mean. Yeah, everybody
did it continue for a while?
Oh, it did. It continued for years. And people thought, it's like, Jerry, you can't have a non-smoking nightclub. And now they're all non-smoking. So he was a visionary.
Yeah, that's right. There's a club that just closed. Well, it's a bar. The Star Bar. Did you ever perform at the Star
Never
Bar?
did, no.
It just closed.
Really?
And very well-known comics would come to try out new stuff there.
Now, where was that?
In Little Five Points.
Okay.
You couldn't see. It was so much smoke in the place. I don't know how they got away with it. It was so much smoke in the place, but they just closed down. But a lot of big comics came to perform there. Okay, you're a friend of mine, Daryl Rhodes, Mr. Daryl Rhodes. There's Daryl.
I love Daryl.
What's the most? Daryl was always on the edge of fame. He.
You could even argue like he was like famous in his own, in Atlanta.
Very well known.
Before doing music, he was kind of like the Frank Zappa of Atlanta.
He was.
The Mahavishnu Orchestra.
But Dr. Demento paid a lot of his music.
Yeah, and
Daryl, he was going to tour with Dr. Demento, but I think the guy's agent messed up. Then a lot of his music was on the Bill Tush show. Do you remember Bill Tush?
Yes.
Tush?
Bill Tush, yeah.
Tush. And so a lot of his music, and he performed on the Bill Tush show with Jan Hooks.
Jan Hooks.
Jan Hooks.
For SNL,
she was on it too. So, okay. How much time do we have left, Matt?
About 8 minutes.
8 minutes. Now, Dan Friedman, you toured with Dan Friedman.
He and I are the ones doing the 5-week tour
Okay.
of the Pacific Northwest.
Okay, so he's in this too.
He is in this. I am in this.
Okay.
And then the guy that shot the movie, David Oyster, is not in it, but you hear him asking us questions. And,
Okay.
he's
So,
into that.
so we'll see Dan and Chris DePetta. Tell me the most. Chris DePetta is part owner in the Punchline, the legendary Punchline. Very nice man. And he's worked with everybody. There's no way he doesn't.
He knows everybody, yeah.
And he's been agent to Jeff Foxworthy. Who else is an agent?
Steve Harvey, Billy Gardell, Tim Wilson.
A lot of big names.
A lot of big names.
And what's the most memorable thing from Chris DePetta? There's Chris.
Well, yeah, I think it's true. He was saying that the really great comics are a little bit nuts.
I saw him in the interview.
Yeah, they're a little bit, and I think that is probably he had a lot of good insight, and also just about, because I asked him, like, why do road comics wind up being the Tim Allens and the Drew Carreys and the Fox and the Lenos? And he said because they have a point of view. They've lived. They've developed into an entire person.
Right.
And they're developed their act, and so that's why if you're 20 years old, you don't know who you are.
No, there's sometimes in this industry it takes you about 10 years to know who.
Yeah.
It's like being a doctor.
It's like finding your voice.
It's like being a doctor.
Being a doctor.
It really is.
Yeah, it really is.
So we have time to show a clip of One-Nighter.
One-Nighters. Now, I will say that I think the video resolution is pretty poor, but in the finished film,
it'll be better.
Much better.
Okay, let's go ahead and play the clip. A 3-minute clip, so 3.5.
I think the best comedians are road comedians.
Miles, I think, from.
We might have to stop and look that one.
And there's also a time change. I believe it's 1968 right now in Montana and Idaho. Yeah, Barry Goldwater is still quite popular. I don't like Montana. I think I'll go to Idaho.
I don't like Idaho. I think I'll go to Montana.
Idaho. This seems dull. Let's go back to Montana.
No, let's go back to Idaho.
Look, it's the Unabomber. Let's go back to Idaho.
It's potatoes. It's potatoes. Look. It's buffalo. It's buffalo. Genitalia straddles the line. The beer is called Hebrew. I am not making this shit up, all right? The only difference is when you open it, instead of it going, it goes, oi, oi, oi.
incredible breed. I mean, they're a lot of fun, but generally they're a little nuts, you know. I mean, in a lot of ways, they're out of their minds. You know, the really good ones have some defect.
Ellensburg, there's no bird like Ellensburg.
You can be a comedian who's never done any road comedy, one-nighter kind of stuff. I don't think he really understands what it is to be a comedian.
You know, I always thought when I was a kid, Boy, the cool guys are the guys that never quite made it. You know, the guys that the big-time comics thought were the funniest guys who never made it, who worked in the smoky rooms for low money. Well, then I worked for years in smoky rooms with low money. I go, this sucks. You know, this is awful.
How many seconds we got left? Matt? Couple of minutes. We got a couple. That was very good. So let me tell you. So what's the next step with this?
Well, okay, I've submitted this to a bunch of film festivals, so I'm waiting to hear back who's going to premiere it, and then I will release that information when I get it.
But aren't we going to have a premiere in Columbus?
I hope so.
Jerry
I'd like to. I'd like to go to Jerry, because that's where Tim Wilson's from. That's where Jerry lives.
Yeah,
I think
it's a great town.
Yeah, I think Columbus would be a really great place.
So I want to drive up and see the premiere.
All right, you're invited.
And Judy Tenuta is coming. Jay Leno, they're all coming.
I do not believe that's correct. But
so you're going to have to shop this at movie festivals.
Well, yeah,
like Sundance Festival. Did you go to Sundance?
Sundance doesn't open till April, but I've sent it to Toronto. I've sent it to Cannes.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
So you have to be accepted.
They tell you, when and where, and then you go and hope that it does well.
Very good. Well, I can't wait to see the finished product. Well, Phil, and are you performing any place soon, or?
I got nothing on the books, but if you want me,
okay. That's what I always say. If you want me.
If the price is right, what I do is I'll go to your house and tell jokes for $500, and then it's another $500 to leave.
That's right.
You want to leave? Yeah, it's $1,000 total.
People do not realize how hard this profession really is. People really sacrifice when they're young going into this profession.
Yeah,
sure. They eat out. They live sleep in their cars, eat out of tin cans. Unless you're Jeff Fox, really. He almost got discovered overnight. Almost.
He did really.
And truly nice guy. Truly nice man.
It helps if you're really funny, which that's.
And he was
holding me back.
I told you, my insurance agent was friends. They were in the group together, buddies. He was always funny.
Yeah, he's a funny
before
guy.
He ever became it. He just naturally was funny. So
Anyway,
thank you so much, Phil.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure.
And thank you for tuning in to Comics on Parole. Tune in 30 days from now when we don't know who will be on the show, but they will be here. Thank you.